Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada.
Yo.
Yes. I love it. Can you guys hear me all right? Ben, it's good to see you, brother.
Don, it's good to see you. Derek, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ben.
So, Ben,
what's going on?
This is really like an informal conversation. This is fun stuff. Derek, listen, Ben and I, ironically, we only met like a month ago. All right. He's one of those guys where I feel like I've known for, my entire life. And just birds of a feather flock together. What can I say? I mean, he's just a stud in the industry. And when you hear him on stage, you're just blown away. And, you're going to love his, athletic background and the people he's been around. I just think it's going to be a great conversation. I just want to just keep it real loose as always. And let's have some fun.
So you guys, I thought it was pretty cool. Like, you consider this like D&D radio. So you treat it like it's just like a radio interview, just very laid back and chill. Is that what
back. Yeah. You want to know what I found out is, like, a lot of times when we bring people on, it gets so technical. It's like, I think in the beginning we were doing that. We were bringing on a lot of people who were incredibly, everyone who comes on smart, but like, I think it's also, you can be smart and you can't deliver the message. It's two different things. So I just think we kind of keep this as a really loose conversation. And if anything, we really want to showcase the speaker coming in. This channel's really more about that. It's more about us trying to showcase the speaker and put it up, put them in a really nice light and allow my community and Derek's community to see what they're all about. And hopefully, we can get them some business and get some more eyeballs on their product. So that's really all we're into. We don't do this. We don't profit off of this. This is just something we do out of love and we do out of fun. And I think we have probably closer to 200 episodes now, which is fun.
Wow.
We're doing a lot.
I love it. I love it.
Good stuff. So Derek, Ben, Derek.
Good to meet you. Derek, what do you do? Is that a blackboard behind you?
Yeah, because I had a whiteboard. And then when I would film stuff, like the lights would reflect off of it. So I'm going old school. Right.
I love it.
And and if there's any chalk, I just like grab some dumbbells and, anyways. I what do I do? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out as I turn 55 this year. I work with athletes predominantly, but a lot of teams, and I come from a running background. So it's a lot of sprint speed work, and then rolled that into some rehab work for soft tissue injuries and things like that. So I keep.
That's awesome. You look like you're 35, not 55.
Yeah.
What the hell? I mean, yeah. Please show me your full head of hair while you look at this.
You're funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I met Derek. So I met Derek at my club.
Awesome.
I want to say now 6-7 years ago, and he came in because he was working with a big actor for a role, was in town for 6 weeks. And my head coach turned to me and said, "Hey, listen, can we bring Derek Hansen in?" And I was like, sure. Like, it wasn't something the club, we really ever allowed anyone from the outside, but we're like, bring him in. And, here he's a great guy. And he came in, and the next thing you know, I think on day one, he's running a seminar for all my trainers. So I'm like, what's going on here? And I kind of go in the back and I look, and I swear to God, I'm not lying. For the next 6 weeks, he was teaching every single day. Then he comes to me and he's like, I can have a True Form bring in like a dozen treadmills. Do you want to host a sprinting seminar on me? I'm like, sure, why not? And we just like start, and all this work, like, didn't make a cent, just did it, like, gave himself all this additional work. And we became really tight. And I was like, dude, we got to like start a little channel together. I need you in my life. It was one of those things. So
awesome.
Good stuff. But Ben, listen, thanks for your time. Again, we'll keep this around 40, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about Ben Newman is, I'll give you a little bit of his background, but you're a peak performance coach, correct? I mean, top 50 speaker and 2 times Wall Street Journal best-selling author. Your client list includes Fortune 500 companies around the world. You've worked under some pretty big names, a pretty well-known college, a pretty well-known university and college coach. And we're going to let you dive into that a bit. But I think, Derek, the amount of mindset tools that Ben's able to give to people. I mean, I listened to him speak the first 2 minutes he was on stage at Dr. Gabrielle Lyons' event. I was like, okay, now I know what this is about. Like now it's like now I know what this guy's coming in with, and it was pretty special to hear. And just an incredible story. So Ben, I mean, give us a little bit of background. Let's obviously there's so much history in there, but let's give everyone the Cliff Notes version of like how you got started and where your career's gone.
Well, shoot, I'm sure it's the same for you guys. I feel like I'm still getting started, and I think that's a blessing of having amazing mentors and coaches that I still have. And just like we talked about, Don, which is what I think really caused us to get connected so fast, was that you feel it's like this never finished mindset. So people go, "Oh, you've done this and you've done that." Like I just want to wake up every day and be the best that I can be and not waste any days. And I literally still have 2 coaches. I'm part of an amazing mastermind. I'm reading books every day. And I always look for the mentors who make me feel like I've literally accomplished nothing, so that I can always feel like there's that next level that you can get to. And I think that's the push and challenge of life. And so I'm excited to be able to share my story with all of you and with your listeners. And, a lot of it for me came from adversity and challenge that I faced, just like everybody listening. You all have a story, you have challenge, you have adversity. So for me, as we get into it, I'm sure we'll talk about my pain and my challenge, which is where I've always found my greatest strength. As big as Don's muscles are, his greatest strength doesn't come from those muscles. It comes from the pain and the challenge and conversations that we've had about struggle that you've had and pain that you've gone through and what it was like going through COVID, running a gym. And Derek, I'm sure it was the same for you, right? When you're training, like there's less exposure, like you're going to go train people to go run and compete, and there's nothing to compete in, right? I mean, so much was shut down. And so where do we really find our pain and challenge, or our strength comes from pain and challenge, I've always found.
Yeah, that resonates with me. And I think sometimes I'm very aware of this idea that I don't want to get comfortable, because as soon as things get comfortable and I don't have to, like you said, grind and feel that pain, the motivation isn't quite there. It's not the same. It's not the same driving force. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
That's, it's funny, Ben, because, thinking about even my life, the second we could have like the best month from a revenue standpoint, but if I feel like my position is stagnant, I actually start getting a bit nervous, right? Like I always feel like I have to, what's next, or how are we working to move forward? And I know it's probably a good thing, but can also be a bad thing. Do you think?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do, and I've gotten this sense from you, Don, through our conversations we've had, is I encourage people, don't focus on the money. Like if you're only focused on the money, I promise you it's going to be really hard to make money. And, you guys can highlight the things you want people to hear, 5 years and 2 national championships with Coach Saban and 10 years with Coach Kleiman at Kansas State. I mean, those are the 2 winningest college football coaches over the last 15 years in all of college football. And those are the 2 head coaches that I've worked with. And it's like getting a doctorate in leadership. And so, for me, what people don't recognize, I didn't start there. I started when my high school basketball coach in 2011 called me and said, "Hey, Benny boy, these boys are underperforming. Will you come fire them up?" And literally went back to my high school basketball team. All of my work in speaking and coaching was all corporate from 2006 until 2011. And then I literally have my high school basketball coach call me, "Benny boy, come speak." And I'm like, "Sure, coach. Like, what night do you want me there?" And you go and give this pregame speech in a shitty locker room with terrible lockers. They have no money to pay you to be there. I didn't even want money. I was like, "You've given me a chance to make a difference in these kids' lives." And that night they were playing the number 10. I'm a St. Louis born kid, still live in St. Louis. And they're playing the number 10 team city in St. Louis. Our high school's unranked, and we literally beat them at their place. And I was hooked. I went for, it was 8 or 9 straight years going back to my high school for no money. Even when I was working for Saban in Alabama, I'm still going to my high school, fired up these kids for free, because I think we have to stay connected to your roots and your passion. And then the money becomes a byproduct of your hard work and passion doing the things that'll one day reward you. financially.
You can't do what we do, especially what you do, I'm sorry, all of us, if you don't have this like deep burning love and this deep burning desire to want to get better. I mean, when you talk about it, you put it that way, it's a reminder. You didn't go work for these coaches and you didn't have it all figured out. Like, you went in there, and the amount of information you must have absorbed by watching, these coaches deal with. It's not a team with 5 guys on it. Let's be very clear here. Like, you're dealing with 40, 50, especially football, different personalities, and watching this coach deal with different coaches and dealing with different players in different situations. You can't learn that in the best university on the planet that's, teaching, human psychology. Well, I don't, whatever it is, like, that's an education you cannot pay for.
Yeah, you can't. And the amazing thing is, it's the crossover between sports and business. And most people think, for me, it's like they see all the, the stuff behind me. They're like, oh, I just do stuff in sports. 70% of my work is still in the corporate world. Only 30% of my work is actually in sports. And then people, as I mentioned, they think it was the reverse. I mean, it started corporately for me. But what's been amazing is there's so many lessons I learned from Coach Saban or from Coach Kleiman that are completely applicable to a CEO that I work with that's running $1 billion organization. I mean, it's like the same types of lessons and struggles and pain, and how do I communicate, and how do I empower our people to take ownership of their behavior, and all of these things. I mean, Coach Saban was ranked by Forbes magazine several years ago as the number 11 leader in the world. Not football coach, not sports coach, leader in the world. And so many of these lessons that I know in our work with athletes, you find like it's a total parallel.
You find, like, in terms of leadership styles and personalities, like, there's different ways to be effective. Like, if I look at what happens with Kansas City Chiefs, say, and Andy Reid, and how he handles things and how he comes across, and versus, say, maybe a Bill Belichick, who's not as, I don't know what the word is, jovial, but
yeah.
Do you think it's really dependent on that person and that their personality and how they kind of make it work for them?
So it's funny that you bring up that example. I've spent time with Belichick, and I've worked with players on the Patriots team for years. And my first year working with a Patriots player was actually in 2014 when they won the Super Bowl. And I'll never forget, I'm there, the player brings me in, and so I'm there for the game, and you fly in the day before the game, and it's family photo day and all this. And the player introduces me to Belichick. It's the first time I ever get to meet Coach Belichick. And the dude looks at me like, I don't care who you are. I have a football game to coach tomorrow. Like, basically gave me a look like, dude, get out of my face. I want nothing to do with you right now. Like, could have cared less to build a relationship for any reason in particular, right? Wanted no part of it. Now, I don't know Andy Reid, but from what I've heard about Andy Reid, and a couple of Kansas State players that I worked with were rookies on this year's Super Bowl team. I mean, they love the guy. It's a total opposite, right? I mean, he's talking cheeseburgers. He's having fun. Like, and so, yes, absolutely. All coaches are going to be different. Heck, there's some people, right? And you think about it, Don, you alluded to it. A college team is 130 players. If you think I walk in with 130 Alabama football players and they all love me, you're wrong. There's probably 10 guys who are like, dude, like, this guy's vein starts popping out of his neck. The dude's screaming and yelling. Like, that dude's too much for me. But if there's 120 guys that like the message, yeah, I'm probably going to have a role in the organization. And so it's, coaches are going to be different. Messages are going to be different. That's why I always encourage people, like, you have to find your voice and your coaching style, but not everybody's going to love you. If I write a book, you think everybody's going to love the book? No, some people are going to hate the book, and they're going to say it's the worst book ever. It's a piece of trash, and they're going to give me 1-star ratings on Amazon. Does that make me a bad person and a bad author? No, there's just a handful of people that didn't like the book. And so I think people have to stay in their lane, find their voice, and then find confidence in the discipline that you create by making a difference in people's lives. And Don, as amazing as you are as a trainer, there's probably some people who have trained with you a couple of times and you never see him again. And they're probably like, dude, this guy was too much, or that guy's like, I think that guy's terrible, And it's like, but
listen, you're not going to,
right.
And you can't make everyone happy. Like, you're not going to go in there and bat 1,000. You're always going to have a situation where, maybe something goes wrong, or maybe it was a bad day. I mean, if you've been doing this 25, 30 years, there's no human being that's ever been perfect. So I completely agree with you. Now, I want to ask you a question. I mean, the number one thing I hear, because it's always easy when you're dealing with someone who's motivated, right? Like someone who, like, this is in their blood, and they have that work ethic, right? And they have that discipline, and they're coming in. I always say, like, I would personally rather be disciplined than always motivated. Like, discipline is something that, even because there's so many days I may not be motivated, but I have the discipline to come in and do it. But the thing I hear from a lot of people is, man, like, I just look at you and I want it. Like, I just, like, for some reason, I wish I was in the situation where I just wanted to do these things, whether it's exercise or whether it's eat right. How, like, this might be an impossible question to answer, but how difficult do you think it is to change someone's mindset? Like, when you're dealing with an athlete that's relied on talent and just talent, and they come into a system like Alabama, and they realize that, wow, there's a lot of great players here. There's a lot of great talent. I got to play by the rules. And there's specific things that in their, daily habits that they're not doing to play by the rules. Like, do you find it? I mean, it's not impossible to change them, but, like, how do you, and it might be an impossible question to answer, but how do we
it's actually not impossible. I believe that I've found the answer. It's one of the unique things that I found in our coaching approach, having done this for 18 years. I've been doing this for over 18 years. And so in 18 years, I mean, you're going to see people in sports business at the highest possible level. And the highest performers I've found, you and I talked about this. I had you on our show, The Burn. Hopefully some of your listeners watched when I had you on The Burn, because it was an amazing episode.
That was
cutting
great
up with you. But what I consider The Burn to be is there's so many coaches and speakers that talk about why and purpose, right? So if Derek and I were to talk about his why and purpose, that's very incredibly important. But if I really want to push Derek, if I really want to talk about it, get him to take his speed to the next level and really find that next gear, why and purpose is not going to be enough. Derek and I are going to have to say, Derek, what's the burn? What's the underlying fire? What's the reason why on the day that you don't want to do it, when you connect to that sacrifice, or you connect to that deep fire and burn, you're going to go to work on the day you don't want to do it? And hey, Derek, when you had like a record time for you, like that next day, so like you just won and you won big, you're still hungry the next day. How do you show up after you win? And it's the burn that ignites your why and purpose on the days that you don't want to do it, and especially after you win. And so one of the things Coach Saban, when he brought me in, and it was such a blessing. I mean, there's literally, and I almost saw it a couple of times at Alabama. If somebody comes in and the message doesn't resonate, I mean, Saban will damn near pull them off the stage and give them an invitation to never come back. So the fact that I was there for 5 years and I probably had 75 visits to the Alabama football program is like unheard of. And one of the things Coach Saban always had me do every year, every rookie class, all the new guys coming in, the first message that they would get from me was on the burn. And we would talk about the burn, and we would talk about discipline, and we would talk about mindset, because your confidence comes from your discipline, not talent. A lot of people think, oh, well, I'm confident, I'm talented. No, the real champions, they understand discipline, and they hammer the discipline because there's a burn in the reason why they do it. So one of my favorite stories of this burn concept, to frame this for people. So I do this rookie training 3 years ago, okay? So one of the rookies stands up and comes up to me when I finish, and he comes up and he says, hey, man, I want to tell you what my burn is. I said, all right, tell me what your burn is. He said, I wear the number 1 because my little sister died when she was 1. And he said, when I put on that jersey, I get the opportunity to do this, to put my family in a better position that my little sister never had the opportunity for. And now I get to do that for my family. You're like, this is a freaking 18-year-old kid? And so then we walk out to practice. So a lot of times, you'll speak in the middle of the afternoon or after a lift. So then we go out to practice. First player I see when I walk into the indoor that day is this player. and I see his number one. I walked up to him, I put my arm around him, and I said, I will never look at your jersey the same ever again. That player is going to be drafted into the first round of this year's NFL draft. That's the power of the burn. So his why and purpose, like his burn is this little sister that never got a chance to live. Like, you think that kid's going to waste days? So he gets to become the catalyst to completely change his family's life forever. And you think that kid's going to waste his days? It's the same for me. My mother left this earth far too soon. She passed away 11 days before my 8th birthday. We had 24-hour nursing care in the house my mother's last year living. My mother would come to the dinner table with an IV stand. When I say my mom, a divorced mom, divorced when I was 6 months old. I never even knew my parents together. 24-hour nursing care in the house. And she's coming to the dinner table with an IV stand. Sometimes it took one nurse, sometimes it took two, to come to the dining room table to ask me how my day was at school. And then my mother passes 11 days before my 8th birthday when she's 38 years old. I'm a 45-year-old man. That means I've been given 7 extra years that my mother never got. And you think I'm going to waste the day? And so that becomes a burn that ignites the why and purpose every day. So for me, Derek, and I can't waste a day. I can't. Yeah. Are my days perfect? Hell no. I get it handed to me. I will tell you, we're recording this on a Thursday. My Monday was absolutely terrible this week. I mean, it was like I got it handed to me. And then I woke up on Tuesday and it was like, God, didn't you get my prayers? I didn't want another one of these, because Tuesday started worse than Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the days weren't perfect days, but I got to the end of the day and I did what I was supposed to do. And the only thing I can attest to why this player, why you guys, or why I fight through it, it's because of this burn.
Yeah. And we have, what's the alternative, Derek, right? Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to stop? Are you going to give up? Are you going to have a bad day and crawl in bed? Like, I'm stubborn, Derek. I'll kick it right back to you, but I just want to say this for a second. I'm stubborn. Like, listen, I know I'm aging. We all are. I know I'm getting older. I'll be 50 in 3 years. But there's just
I just want to, just for the record, before you get to Derek, I just want to age like Derek, because I mean, are you kidding me?
Derek, how old are you? Derek, what are you, 50?
I'm 50? Turning 55 this year. It's killing me, like, mentally.
So now people are going to think I'm 70 when you say that. When I just told them that I'm 45, like, oh, this Ben Newman guy, he's got great energy, but the dude's like 70.
I'll take your energy. I'll take your energy any day, man. But it's just, I'm stubborn. I believe it. I believe it can be trained. I believe this stuff can be trained. I believe it can be developed. But like anything else in life, we're going to respond to things differently. There might be a drill you give someone and they nail it out of the gate. And there might be that same drill you give to another person and they're a bumbling idiot for the next few days. It's just like things click differently. I just think we can't give up. We got to keep pushing.
So is it a lot more difficult to take someone who hasn't had the poverty or the trauma or the deprivation, and maybe you're working with some guy who like grew up in Beverly Hills or the Hamptons, and I got to motivate this guy? How do I find the burn for somebody like that who doesn't have something to draw from?
I love it. It's an amazing question. I'm so glad that you asked it, Derek. And that's probably the most common question that I get, because that'll be an answer. People say, man, like I feel terrible that you went through that with your mom. I never experienced that. Or you talk about this play. I've never had any loss like that. And so typically I find the burn either comes from something that somebody's set, like my parents sacrificed for me. They both had multiple jobs, or I'm currently sacrificing or becoming the example for the little eyes that are watching me in my house. So you could say to somebody, hey, it doesn't matter that you came from X, Y, and Z background. You now have 2 children of your own. What do you want your example to be? Because your example of how you act is what your kids understand hard work looks like and what discipline looks like. So if you pay attention to that, they may then say, I never thought of it that way. Why am I so lazy with my workouts? Why am I lazy with my nutrition? Why am I lazy with my work? My kids are now watching me. And so it comes in different formats. However, I always encourage people, and I'm going to give you another story, an example where it kind of speaks to the example you're giving, Derek, because people can say the sacrifice. There was a financial advisor that I worked with down in Florida, and this was just a grown man. I mean, 3 kids at home. He's like, man, he's like, Ben, I've heard you talk about this for years. I just don't know what my burn is. And so we settled on something that was actually monetary for him. I do typically tell people, like, let's not make it monetary. Let's find something deeper, because then it'll last forever. Like, you hear my story, that lasts forever. This player, it lasts forever. So I said, okay, the sacrifice, the example for your kids, it's not hitting you. I said, man, like, what's a really big goal you have right now? He said, man, he goes, I want to build a dream home for my wife. And he says, like, when I tell you, like, I want to build this dream home, I'm talking like, when my wife walks into the kitchen, I want her to look at the knobs. I'll never forget this. I want to look at the knobs on the counters and on the drawers. And I want to know that the knobs were the exact ones that my wife wanted, not like, well, we had to kind of skimp on the knobs because we needed to save. He's like, I want the house to be exactly what she wanted. I said, look, even though my burn is emotional, maybe that's your burn. So I said, let's every day imagine you wake up and you say, I'm going to work so hard so that I can build this dream home. It was over a year later. I'm back in this firm in Orlando. It's a Fortune 100 financial firm. I'm back in this firm. This is one of the leaders of the organization. And he says to me, he's like, man, he's like, I'm back to being like lazy. I don't know what is going on with me. And I looked at him and I said, your house is beautiful. And he says, what? And I said, dude, your house is beautiful. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I saw your house, the pictures on Facebook like 3-4 months ago. The house is awesome. You built the dream house. He's like, thanks. I said, are you getting my gist here? Yeah. I said, you're in the house. Your burn no longer exists because you built the dream home. I said, so now we need to reset and figure out, is it monetary? Is there something emotional now that you found in yourself? So Derek, yes, sometimes it might be emotional, but typically it's something different. But whether it's emotional, whether it's monetary, whether it's sacrifice, whether it's pain, what I've found is when you help take people to them owning their burn, they then take ownership. Right. So Derek, look at it. Look at it. This is the new AI. Can you believe that? Was that the perfect time to, like, if you're going to put video out, was that, I don't even know what the hell I just did. And we just had fireworks and explosions.
Why is your screen doing that? I'm not doing it. I'm not getting fireworks.
I've got the special screen. See, Dr. Lyon, she gives me the extra juice where in my fingers, I get this stuff that sends off fireworks. So Derek, I would say to you, and if people are listening to this, they're going, what the hell are these guys talking about right now? But Derek, I would say to you, think of a time where you were training somebody, like for speed, right? And like you're looking at this person and you're going, I know that they can give more. But if you point into that person's face and you're like, you're slacking, they're like, dude, this Derek, this guy isn't, and they start to resist you, right? But when you can find that way to say something in that particular way, where you help them find it, they're like, man, I can give more. And then they own it. What happens, Derek?
Yeah, they magically are better. Yeah.
Yeah, they really are.
And then if they chose it and they go, I created the feeling. That's why I think motivation is fleeting. Like, I hate when people tell me, oh, he's a great motivational speaker. I'm like, please stop calling me a motivational speaker, because motivation is fleeting. I'm a coach. Like, if I can't make a long-term difference in your growth and your thinking and how you show up in your life, like, I don't want any part of motivating you for an hour and then you forget what the hell I said a week later. Like, let's figure out a way to move the needle. So when you do that with somebody with speed and then they own it, they're like, you see what I did? And then you just keep pouring into them. Man, I saw that switch in you. I loved it. Like, what do you want to do tomorrow that causes us to hit that switch again? Oh, Derek, can we repeat what we did? You're darn right. I'm going to put that down in our plan notes for tomorrow. And then they want to attack it the next day, because that's far different than you pointing in their face going, you need to do this or we're not going to be able to improve your speed. They're just going to resist it.
So do you feel like everyone has some sort of burn inside of them?
Every single person. And so one of the questions, let's say if you guys were to adopt this and you say, okay, I'm going to start talking to people to go deeper with them. And there's that person, they're just resisting, they're pushing. It's the 25-year-old guy or girl. And she's saying, I grab your future and bring it to today. I love that question. I always say, 25-year-old kid, this stuff's too big for me. I'm just a kid. I don't have a family. You know what? Just do me a favor. Grab your future and bring it to today. And all of a sudden, what do? They start saying, well, here's what I want in the future. But I want to be married one day. I want to have kids. Tell me more about your kid. How many kids do you want to have? I don't know, maybe 2 kids, maybe 3. So now you got a person who told you they've got no clarity, no vision, no nothing. They want to be married. They want to have kids. You ever want to run a business or anything? Like, oh, that's a dream of mine. Now they start leaning in, right? Because people want to resist the work that's going to come with making a commitment to you, Don, that I want my body to look that way. Or Derek, I want you to coach me to make this happen. They know if they admit that to you, there's work behind it. And they'd rather just shut you down and go on about their life than lean into the tough conversation, the work, or actually reveal what they really believe. So when you say grab your future and bring it to today, if they go, I don't care about my future, I don't want a future, I don't want to work with you anyway. So thank you for, answering the question honestly. Let's just move on about our way. But we all know that's not going to happen. They're going to open up to you.
Dave?
Ben, I'm curious about your background, and we heard a bit about your youth, but like what academic choices, what things were you drawn to, and then how did you develop yourself beyond, once you started working? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so I'm really a very brilliant guy. I'm one of those guys like IQ off the charts. I was the guy 19 on my ACT. So I'm talking about like a level of brilliance that is just like, so honest to God, I went to Michigan State University and from St. Louis, right? St. Louis kid, you go to Michigan State University. I actually was a good student because I worked hard. So I had a 3.6 GPA. I had a 19 on my ACT. It was automatic acceptance to Michigan State. At that point in time, they wanted out-of-state students so bad that a 19 on your ACT was automatic acceptance. Like, it's perfect for a guy like me. I can't stand these standardized tests. So thankfully I got in. Now, speed forward to today, if you would send a 19 to Michigan State, they'd say, sir, this is a mistake. Like, I don't even think we're going to cash your check for your application. And so I was never the guy that was really, really smart. But you know what? I always loved people. So every opportunity I had, I would lean into learning. I would lean into the details. I would lean into the work. I was willing to get my hands dirty. I wanted to have those mentors. I wanted to have those coaches. I wanted to have those people who would pour into me. So a lot of what I've done in my life has come from those hard knocks of life, that hard learning. So I went into sales and I was a paper broker, my first job out of college, and literally like Steve Carell out of The Office. So I went into sales because I love relationships. I had a father who a lot of pain that came and struggle in my relationship with my dad. He was an attorney. And literally, if I would have gone to law school, he would have given me his law firm. And my dad was a trial attorney that didn't lose for 15 years. And Johnny Cochran, who was, O.J. Simpson's attorney. I mean, my dad was of counsel for Johnny Cochran in St. Louis. So you're talking about I could have taken over a firm that had brand notoriety. I would have had it made. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go make a life of my own. I didn't want the easy way. So I've always wanted this hard way of life. And so I went into sales jobs and you learn about people. And then the sports stuff, I kind of fell into it. High school basketball coach, I got lucky. So I worked hard in sales and I had great discipline. So that's how I started getting invited to speak. And then I started realizing when I paid attention to patterns of behavior, when I really started to study mindset, or I would study sports psychologists. And a lot of it, Derek, I got lucky, man. I mean, one of the sports psychologists for the St. Louis Cardinals, so this was years after me doing research and studying and almost like getting a doctorate on my own, right? I go sit in his office. His name is Dr. Jason Selk, brilliant, brilliant guy. Become a dear friend. He's had a huge impact on my life, used to coach me. He was a sports psychologist for the St. Louis Cardinals from 06 to 11. The bookends, both world championships. It was probably like 2012 when I first walked into his office to meet him. What are the things you talk about, Ben? What are your tools? What's your training? And I literally told him, and he goes, this is like the same principles that I teach. Like, this is all sports psychology based. And so, Derek, I just kind of fell into it because I paid attention and I studied and I worked. And I'm not saying that somebody doesn't need a doctorate, but I'll tell you, one of the things for me that's been a major advantage, when I go into an Alabama, when I go into a Kansas State, the kids don't feel threatened by me. They're like, oh, that's my guy. Oh, Ben's here. That's my guy. So because I'm not a doctor, it's actually been an advantage for me And then when they realize the years that I've taken to study the mindset and the books and the training and the experience and the breakthroughs I've had with people, I haven't needed the doctorate. I feel like I got one, if that makes sense.
I also think you're like a world-class communicator, right? Like, I think you're on like another level when it comes down to how you communicate and how you deliver that message. It's very, I think those are like, in my business, I would always separate it. I'm like, oh, are they a good trainer? Or are they a good coach? Or are they both? And people are like, what's the difference? I'm like, well, a trainer is someone that understands, or they should understand some anatomy and kinesiology, has taken a certification, understands the movements, etc. And they're like, well, what's a good coach? I'm like, a good coach that can take all that information and deliver it and make it effective and allow that person to own it and improve. A good coach can come into a room and take someone who maybe doesn't have much discipline or much, I know we don't like the word motivation, but they can make you want it. And I think I think you're way smarter than you lead on to be. I get it. I mean, you are very smart, but I think your ability to communicate with people, I think that is like next level stratosphere stuff that we're talking about here. And then obviously, like, you gotta, like, not blowing smoke up your ass here, like Nick Saban, who's the 11th ranked the 11th best world leader in the world, or whatever the actual term was. He's not going to bring in some schlep speak to his team. I'm actually incredibly impressed how he is that smart, right? Like, he's like, well, wait a second, football and skill and weightlifting and supplements and all that stuff and film tape, that's just not enough. Like, I need a gun in there who can actually make sure that my players' minds are right and make sure that they're optimizing at peak performance. And I think that's what I'm most impressed about when you talk about him. It's like, oh my God, he recognizes, in a way, what makes him so great is that he recognizes he can't do it all on his own. Like, he has to bring in A+ people to help him facilitate those needs.
And it's actually, and I'm humbling hearing you say those things, and I appreciate all the words and thank you. It's the amazing thing when I share things about Saban, because it like, the Saban that people see on the sidelines, they think it would be the reverse, right? Like, that guy would never let anybody in the building. He probably does everything himself. He probably micromanages everybody. No, he just had an expectation that was so high that every detail had to be covered. I was told on one of my first visits, he looked at the food budget. The guy literally ran. Now, he didn't spend a lot of time on it, but like, he was line iteming and looking at the food budget because he treated that football program like it was an organization. Literally, when he made me my offer to bring me in, he's like, I could foresee you being the mental conditioning coach for our organization. Like, I almost wanted to start laughing in his office. I'm like, did you just call this an organization? I thought this was a college football team. But he literally treated it like, I have to understand the details. And a great CEO does what? He leverages so that you can get better. A really great CEO doesn't say, I do everything by myself. And those are the things that blew me away that you're catching on to about Saban. It was amazing. He would leverage everything. It was fascinating.
Don't you find it ironic, though, how the CEO who is worth millions or billions of dollars, and you've worked with them and I've worked with them, they're performing at such a peak level in one area. And then you can look at another area of their life and they're like I'm going to use this term, I'm sorry, a mental midget. A mental midget. Like, whether it's their health, whether it's how they, the relationships they surround themselves with personally. I'm like, wait a second, you're putting yourself, and I've had this conversation with some big names. You're surrounding yourself with this A team in business, and you're hanging out with these people on your social, like, you follow what I'm saying? It doesn't really align. Why do you think that is, when they're, and you said it earlier, the approach is so similar, isn't it?
So I'm a big believer. So I teach a concept, and I've shared this for over 15 years now, called Your Prize Fighter Day. And it comes from just like this analogy of life, that, life is like a boxing match. It's a fight. I don't find it coincidence that a calendar year is 12 rounds, right? Championship fight is 12 rounds. So it's one prize fighter day at a time. And so I always break it down and encourage people, just through asking questions. What do you need to do every day personally to feel like you won? What do you need to do every day professionally to feel like you won? What do you need to do every day that's of service to somebody else And if you can do something that's personal, business related, and of service every day, and you stack those days on top of each other, the byproduct is winning at very high levels. So what I think happens is you take this billionaire, this leader, she's made so much money she could never spend it in her life, but people always told her she was so great. So she got so caught up in her identity at work, she never felt that she had to have an identity doing anything else. So because you get so caught up and that's your identity and nobody was there to support her or challenge her because it was you make money, you do this, that became the identity. There was nothing else. And that's where I love having breakthroughs with individuals like that, because I say, hey, look, like, I think it's amazing what you've done, but what are the things you want to do personally? What are the things you want to do charitably? Where are the gaps in terms of what's really going to fulfill you in your life? And then they say, gosh, I always wanted to start this charity. Well, what do you need to do to make it happen? Money's not the issue. So what do you need to do? Or I want to go give back and serve in communities. Why aren't you doing it? Hey, I wish that I was in better shape. Okay, well, you're not going to get in better shape by snapping your fingers. You're going to go meet with Don Saladino, and he's literally going to put together a plan where I've heard you talk about it, where you say, look, if somebody's stamina is 28 minutes, I'm going to build the best 28-minute plan they've ever seen in their life. I'm not going to push somebody to work out for 90 minutes if they say, look, I'd rather die than work out for 90 minutes. Yeah. But Don, what do you know? If I can encourage that person and build a plan where they go hard for 28 minutes, Derek, if you built the same plan, isn't it better to help them fall in love with 28 minutes, which you know is what? Hey, I think I can give a little more. All right, let's go 35. Let's go to 45. And the next thing you know, in 18 months, they're like, hey, this 90-minute workout is the greatest thing I've ever done. It fuels everything in my life. And that's the same person that was overweight and told you they couldn't do it. So I think it's shifting the belief system, once again, back to ownership, that like, don't define yourself in one area of your life. Let's figure out the other areas where you can give more and create more of a balanced life, which most people say, like, that's my definition of balance. Just hit these areas, that's balance. When most people say that doesn't exist, I'm like, it's bullshit. Of course it exists. You can't do something to make a difference in somebody's life every day?
Simple. It seems like a very simple concept in a lot of people. I always like to say they're deposits people and they're withdrawals type of people, right? I just got off the phone with Dr. G, our good friend, and Dr. G is a deposits type of person. You're a deposits type of person. Me and Derek are deposits type of people. And when you start surrounding yourself with those people, I think that's what makes it special, because we all want to see each other win, right? And the withdrawal type of people, which I've had in my life, and people are very close to me, it becomes very draining. But I think you got to be a mature adult and you got to learn to start eliminating those toxic relationships and those people that could be bringing you down.
And shame on both of us. We love you, Dr. G. We wouldn't be on here if it wasn't for you. So shout out. We should have done that at the beginning.
I always shout. We always shout. D, anything else you want to add there?
I've got a question in it, and I don't know if you're involved in. I've been involved with like transitions of leadership, but obviously Alabama is going through one. They have a new coaching staff, and I'm wondering, how do you make those transitions successful? Taking what was good from the previous regime and maybe adding something new with the new people coming in, like we've seen. Like, I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so I see what's happened with the Boeing Corporation, and they're going through some rough times now because there's been leadership transitions. How would you handle that if you're working with Alabama?
Yeah, so it's believe it or not, I have a lot of experience in this area, because when we left, so Coach Kleiman, who I mentioned is the second winningest coach over the last 15 years. So he's the head football coach at Kansas State. We just started our 10th year together. The first 4 years together were at North Dakota State. So we won 3 national championships as a 1AA powerhouse. Carson Wentz, his senior year, he went on to win a Super Bowl with the Eagles. He's had a great NFL career. He's had some amazing years. Carson, my first year was his senior year. So 4 years there, 3 national championships. We then go and replace at Kansas State Bill Snyder. So imagine this, Derek. You're replacing the legendary Bill Snyder. The football stadium is named after this guy. There's a statue out in front of the stadium of the head coach you're replacing. I'll never forget it. We're sitting in Coach Kleiman's office at North Dakota State, and we're preparing to go win this 3rd and final national championship. He'd already accepted the job. He's a man of high integrity. So he told the athletic director, Gene Taylor at Kansas State, I will not accept this job unless you let me finish my season here and help these kids win a national championship. So we're sitting, getting ready to prepare this national championship. And he looks at me and he's like, are we crazy? I'm like, for what? And he's like, for taking this job at Kansas State. He's like, brother, are we crazy? I said, well, Coach, what do you mean? He's like, well, you look at the media, they're like, are you nuts? Like, why would you go and try? The stadium is named after this guy. They've actually had a couple of bad years in a row. Recruiting is down. You're setting yourself up to fail. Like, who would take that job? Now, this is going to blow you away. That day, I said to him, because he said, what's our messaging going to be when we go see this team? Okay, it's one of my favorite stories to tell. I teach this. It's called Aggressive Patience. The last book I wrote was called The Standard. And I literally tell this story in the book, and it's all about aggressive patience. So we're sitting in his office. I go, Coach, we're not crazy, I believe. He says, okay, well, if you believe in this, what's our message going to be? At the time, I was reading a book called Pound the Stone by a guy named Joshua Metcalf, which, essentially pound the stone, show up every day. You don't break open a stone with one swing. You do it with 1,000 swings. And so all of a sudden, we're sitting in his office. I say, I think the message is pound the stone. So I did two things after I left his office that day. Number one, I came home. I went to Home Depot. I bought a sledgehammer. If you guys go on my Instagram, you'll see me with the original sledgehammer when I just gave my talk to kick off year 6 at Kansas State. Things are going pretty well there. We're back for year 6, right? So we weren't crazy for taking the job. But I literally had the sledgehammer. I painted it purple with purple spray paint, put the Wildcat logos on it at FedEx, did this with my daughter at the time. She's just a little girl. And we literally take that out. It's on the field for every game and it hangs in the locker room. That was one thing. Second thing was I said, Coach, the message will be pound the stone. And on the back, I wrote down all these goals that I believe this team would achieve. Literally, I said the first year we're going to go 8-5. That first year we went 8-5. I said that we would win a Big 12 championship by 2021. We ended up winning the first Big 12 championship in 2022. Derek, people thought we were crazy. So I know this is a long answer that you probably didn't expect, but I think it's worth it. Here's why. It comes down to your belief. So the belief was, we're sitting in Coach Kleiman's office, you're crazy for taking the job. But it doesn't matter what naysayers say in your life. So everybody listening, it's probably a great way for us to finish this, right? Because everybody's got naysayers and people telling you can't do this and you're not good enough or you're not fast enough or you're not. It doesn't matter what people think. It matters what you believe. And we believe that there were principles we learned from these young men. Not that we taught the young men at North Dakota State, that we learned from them. And being a part of them winning a national championship, we knew we could find those great qualities in these young men at Kansas State. And if we would help these young men see in themselves what they had, and if they took ownership of that program by pounding the stone every single day, the crazy ass goals that I wrote before I ever even gave a single talk at Kansas State would come true. So for Coach DeBoer at Alabama, he's going to go in with belief. And he's got to make sure, don't go be Nick Saban. And Coach Kleiman's done a great job of not being Bill Snyder. He walked in there and said, look, we will respect the foundation and legacy that Bill Snyder's built. And all we do every day is try to build on that legacy. And that's the same thing that Kalen DeBoer does. And if Kalen DeBoer goes in with a message, with fire and discipline and things that have built Alabama, I think he's going to do a hell of a job. And there's no doubt in my mind, he and Coach Kleiman are friends. DeBoer's a winner. Now, is he going to win a national championship in the first year? Maybe he will. And Jalen Milroe, the quarterback, who's still a dear friend of mine. I love that kid to death. I've worked with him since he was a freshman. I hope they do win a national championship. It'd be great. It'd be a hell of a story. But if they don't, it may take a couple of years. It took us 4 years to win that first Big 12 championship when people told us we were crazy. So I think it's got to be belief. You got to build people up. You got to have a willingness to learn, and you got to walk in there knowing we can learn from these kids, because these kids have to take ownership. It's not what I can teach them.
I love it. So let's let everyone know. First of all, thank you for your generous amount of time here. I really appreciate it. Obviously, we feel like we can continue this for another 2 hours, but can you let everyone know your Instagram handle, your website, where they can find you for more of your work and your books?
Yeah, bennewman.net is our website. @Continued Fight is Instagram, and would love to stay connected. And Don, I look forward to you and I continuing to do great things together. Derek, I look forward to the opportunity to meet you in person in the future. And if I could just share one final thing, it's the greatest life lesson I ever learned. It came from my mom. It's not how long you live, it's how you choose to live your life. So it's a blessing for me to be able to spend time with great guys like you. And I think for all of us, just choose to be disciplined, choose to believe in yourself, and go write one hell of a story.
Ben, you're a rock star, brother. I can't wait for you to get out here and for us to do more work together. We got a lot to do together, but thanks for leading by example and inspiring, and keep doing you, brother.
Appreciate you both.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben.